A topic that has been circulating the internet since the disastrous bombing of Shazam! Fury of the Gods, as well as the not quite as disastrous but still disappointing results of Quantumania the month before, is the lifespan of superhero movies in our modern pop culture. Heck, if these two weren't already kicked out of the water with everything else that came out in March, the Mario movie certainly put it in its place. This is especially an important topic to discuss, as both Marvel and DC have their next 5 to 10 years of movies planned out, so unless we want to see them go out of business, it's essential to understand what's been going on, what's going on now, and where we can go from here. Before the new millennium, let's be honest, superhero movies, apart from the already absolute biggest pop culture icons at the time and a certain vampire hunter that just so happened to fit in with 90s cheese, were seen as a big joke. Some of them weren't even meant to be released and ended up gaining cult followings because the actually released movies sucked that hard. But through innovative and ingenuitive filmmaking, many talented producers and directors managed to bring the comic book experience to mass audiences in new and creative ways, resulting in the boom we've been getting in the past 20 years, including the innovative and seemingly impossible but ultimately revolutionary multi-franchise continuity now known as the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The MCU has become so revolutionary, as we've discussed on quite a few occasions on this channel, that everyone was trying to catch up with it, and I do mean everyone. DC, Hanna-Barbera, even M. Night Shyamalan. But we all knew that Marvel was the only one that could pull that magic together through long-span planning and an incredible attention to detail when it came to the continuity structure, so much so that we sat through what is and always has been good but not great films to get to the huge event that each phase was building up to, and they took their time with it, knowing that audiences liked the drops and twists and turns of a roller coaster, but wouldn't like them as much without the hill. DC, meanwhile, decided to throw all their Marvels onto their half-baked plan for a continuity, and as a result, lost arguably a lot more money. They took a movie that was meant to put a character like Superman in a more grounded reality, and they said, you know what this needs? More characters for him to team up with, even if it goes against the tone and basis of the film we're spinning it off of. Thus, the next movie threw every character under the sun, in the middle of the main plot no less, and apparently took no lessons from the standalone movie that focused on one character and some unfamiliar side characters before they jumped into the big, not so built up team up for the next movie. This was such a spiraling mess that, in order for the new chairman James Gunn to even come up with a new plan, he had to put a stop to all films not already finished and ready for release just when people were starting to see the potential in a Wonder Woman 3. And apart from The Flash, the way they're advertising their movies seems to put no hype behind them other than, look, another superhero movie. Shazam 2 already bombed this way, and I don't foresee Blue Beetle doing that much better. And you'd think such a debacle would give Marvel the home field advantage, but the mouse unfortunately took that away from them as well. In the past 2 years, Marvel has released an onslaught of projects between 7 movies and 8 TV shows, and while each and every one of them is said to play a part in the new upcoming events, Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, it's hard to honest-to-God tell what projects actually do play a part and which ones are just supposed to get the Disney Plus crowd excited. The movies are most likely going to play a part, but shows like Moon Knight and She-Hulk shows that as of now you could cut out of the MCU and not miss a thing, throw audiences for a loop. Even if every single project played a part though, I'm sure Marvel didn't mean to release so much at once either. Disney, most likely to keep up with subscriber growth, unfortunately demanded more and more content to go along with their excess of already churned out content. But, oh, we threw a lot of money at this one, so it's even better. Yeah, the money really leaps off the screen, guys, along with the sweat and fatigue. In fact, between the shows that could play a part or just be fluff, movies that are currently fluff until we see what part we've played in what I've heard to be an enormously complex continuity, and DC basically not caring about what they release anymore, that's the reoccurring problem with the current slate of superhero movies. Not only is there a ton of them, but none of them matter. They don't matter to audiences, they don't matter to the studios, they don't matter to anyone. The Mario movie may have been panned by critics, but a ton between a potential Smash universe and the success of its new theme park lands in Universal depended greatly on its success, hence why the studio and Nintendo poured their heart and soul into it. Marvel is getting fatigued by how much Disney is demanding of them, causing them to feel about their projects. DC couldn't care less about their current project, and when the two giants of comic book history are failing at the same time, of course people are thinking comic book movies are dying out. It's the equivalent of a head chef of a 5-star restaurant suddenly turning into a cafeteria lady. Here's her slop. Enjoy! Now, that's not to say we won't see any more superhero movies. Of course not. Like I said, superhero movies were around before they were good, and they'll be around after they're good too. Both Marvel and DC have 5 to 10 year plans for their movies, and when each of them have one stumble, they're obviously not going to throw in the towel just because of that. It's like if a light bulb goes out in a house. You don't move out of the house, you fix the light bulb. And trust me, Quantumania was a big enough light bulb for Marvel to turn things around after it went out, and DC has been trying to repair itself since Justice League, so how are we going to fix these light bulbs in this case? I've already discussed before about how Gunn seems to have his head on straight when it comes to properly planning out and executing his DCU, so my only word of advice on that half is keep moving forward with that. Very few people are probably going to check out Aquaman 2 or Blue Beetle, just like they did with Shazam 2, but I feel like Warner Brothers is already aware of that and doesn't really seem to care. However, with Gunn having his insane style, I would also suggest treading lightly and making sure the style that people recognize the franchise for doesn't get lost in translation. We want fresh superhero movies, but also ones that respect the source material, so tread lightly. As for Marvel, though, one thing they definitely need to consider is integrating the hype behind the events of Secret Wars into their current projects the way they integrated the hype behind Thanos and the Infinity Stones into that saga. Maybe they already are and we're just not aware of it, but that's my point. Make your audiences aware of it, because as of now, we basically had, with a few exceptions, an entire phase of movies that affected nothing and meant very little for what was yet to come, and that comes off as, in a word, weak. We sat through their mediocrity in the past because of the promise of what was yet to come. Now, they seem to be making a lot of promises, but we don't know what those promises are or what part everything we've seen so far will play in them. Marvel is typically very secretive about parts of their plan, but they're clearly losing audiences due to throwing out a bunch of projects and not fully establishing what parts the projects may play. At least with the other projects, we had 6 Infinity Stones sprinkled throughout some of the movies and then life-altering events happening in others. Phase 4 was basically an entire phase of epilogues and cheap teases, which was less than appealing to most audiences. For future phases, I would suggest less fluff and more integration. Either way, superhero movies aren't dead, but they've certainly become tiresome, and the reason for that is because at this moment, none of them seem to matter. They're just pointless ventures, fun ones at that, but still pointless, that ultimately mean nothing. And the X-Men and Spider-Man movies that kicked off the genre, and the Avengers events that took the Avengers to a whole new level, earned their ranks because they meant something to everyone. They meant something to filmmakers, they meant something to the audiences, and they meant something to the publishers that created the characters in the first place. As of now, we basically have assembly line products, ones that I would be shocked if they got the same care and attention as the ones before that, but they don't need to stay that way. If Marvel can return to their original form and start integrating a more cohesive narrative among the multitude of movies like they did before, and if Gunn can introduce a similar form to DC, we could see superhero movies return to the front and center like never before.